This video covers section 9.2, nth roots and rational exponents. Objective 2, simplify expressions of the form nth root of a to the nth. We saw in section 9.1 that if we take the square root of 3 squared, we get 3 back. This idea that the nth root and the a to the nth, or the nth power, they undo each other. But we did have to be a little bit careful, because if this was -3 squared, we didn't say this gives you -3, because -3 squared is 9, which gives you 3, and so this gives you 3. So we don't always just get the square root of a squared equaling itself, because if you start with -3, you don't get -3, so we put an absolute value on it. And so then that's going to be true in general, that if the index and the power are even numbers, they'll undo each other, but we need absolute values. But when it's an odd index, it doesn't matter, because the cube root of -3 cubed is the cube root of -27, which is -3. You start with -3 and you get -3. So it's split into two cases, if n is even and if n is odd. And this is all because we can't have negative numbers under even roots, but we can have negative numbers under odd roots. Cube root of x cubed, if the index and the power match, and if they're odd, it undoes it and we just get x. But if the index and the power match and they're even, we have to add the absolute value. There's a negative out in front of this one, and then the 6th root of something to the 6th, they undo each other. But since it's an even index, we have to use the absolute value. And so we put the absolute value around the -3, and then the absolute value of -3 is 3, and so this gives us -3 in the end because of the negative out in front. And cubed root of -8 over 125, that's the cube root of -2/5 cubed. And so with an odd index, no absolute values needed. We just get -2 to the -2/5. This leads us to your practice problem. I encourage you to press pause in your video and work this out, and come back when you're ready to see the solution. Now that you've had a chance to work this out, I'll work this out with you. When the index is even and matches the exponent, it undoes the 2, but we have to use absolute values. Absolute value of -5 is 5. When the index and the power are the same and even, we use an absolute value. When the index and the power are even and match, we undo them and we use absolute value. When they are odd, we just simply drop them and are left with 3x minus 2. In letter E, we have -2 2 to the 5th, and we have 3 to the 5th. Fifth root of something to the 5th, odd. Index and power, we drop them. No absolute values needed when they're odd. And this concludes the video for section 9.2, nth roots and rational exponents. Objective 2, simplify expressions of the form nth root of a to the nth.